Hey everyone, it's Dina Lewis here from Content Forum, and welcome to this week's weekly check-in. I'm very excited today to have Ben Rome joining me. He is the marketing manager from the American Industrial Hygiene Association, or AIHA. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks. It's actually AIHA. We don't try to phonetically pronounce it. It's just a little too weird.
Sorry.
No worries. It's fine.
I'm at the mercy of trying to pronounce acronyms, I guess, too much.
I do it too. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it.
Okay. AIHA, it is. Okay, and folks that are joining us online, if you have any questions as we're going along, you can feel free to post it to ask a question or just type it up in the chat, and we'll take a pause and address those questions as we go. So thanks very much.
Yep.
All right, so Ben, we want to talk about the site refresh that AIHA just went through. So do you want to give us just a quick background on what prompted the whole project?
Sure. So if anyone had ever visited our site in the last 10 years, it was reminiscent of the early 2000s because it was based on a SharePoint 10 platform. Those in the tech know that SharePoint 10 was no longer supported by Microsoft 5 years ago. So we were working off a busted, basically, platform. So there was a lot of ad hoc stuff going on. It had morphed into this kind of gelatinous, linky mess that everyone, all the different departments had requirements about links on the front page, and the drop downs had nearly 15 to 20 things on them. It was a very navigable mess, and the focus groups that we had been doing for other projects, a lot of the comments we started seeing were mentioning about how hard it was to find things on the website, how discombobulated it was, how it just didn't, it was a turnoff to things, and even the web traffic had been in a slow growth and then slow decline. It was going back and forth. It really hadn't done anything spectacular in the last few years, especially since I joined about 4 years ago. So 2 years ago, we were convincing our board that a refresh was needed, and we worked out our budget. We talked with several vendors. We nailed it down to Paper Tiger, who introduced us to the Craft CMS, which is by far and away better than SharePoint 10, which I think everything's better than SharePoint 10 at this point.
Right.
Yep. So at the beginning of the year, we signed our agreement with PPT and then began our long, arduous process to this point where we have a new website out in the world for everyone to see. So there was a lot going in. There's a lot that goes into that, but it was a long process. It was about a 2 or 3 year process to convince the board, get the money set aside, research our vendors, and then finally work through the project itself.
Okay. And can you just describe a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 of the processes you went through to rethink what the new AIHA.org was going to be, the taxonomy, the site architecture? What were some of those things?
So we had done a taxonomy study a few years ago, and we implemented that into the old site. So we retained our taxonomy, which was already extensive enough. We didn't feel like we needed to revamp that, although we did ask the board and some committees for recommendations for additions, and we did remove a couple of pieces. But beyond that, the taxonomy relatively remained intact. The 2 biggest things that we did was we did a card sort exercise, which is basically writing down pages on particular cards. Now, our site has an enormous amount of pages, well over 1,000, 1,500 plus. So we reduced it to just our primary, secondary, tertiary, and in some cases, quaternary sections, put those on cards, and then resorted based on things that we wanted to focus on. We had 3 audiences in mind. The public, because we felt that we were a public resource, and we wanted to showcase that information. Prospects, which are basically people who are either looking to enter the industrial hygiene profession or people who are industrial hygienists or OEHS professionals that didn't have an association home. We wanted to introduce them to the association. And then 3 members. We wanted to make sure that we had a section totally dedicated to handling their benefits and needs. So based on those three audiences, we could reconstructed our architecture through the card sort. Actually, we did 3 card sort exercises to narrow down everything. We determined which pages we needed to dump, which needed to be merged into others, what needed to be, fixed and all that. So by the time we had signed on with Paper Tiger, we already had the architecture lined up. We had a good idea of what we were looking at as far as our scope was. And what all that remained after that was the audit, which would happen after we signed with the vendor. So.
Okay, that's great. So it sounds like you did obviously a lot of that legwork before, like you said, you signed on. So you're part of the marketing and communications team or marketing team. So how did you collaborate with others within AIHA to accomplish some of those things?
So we did it in 2 ways. Before we signed with Paper Tiger, before we even did the vendor process, we as a Marcom, actually a web team, which is a subset, which had a couple of members from the senior leadership, a couple of members from Marcom, and one of the members from a different department. We worked through, and we had a meeting with each department. So each of our interior clients had a sit down with us for about an hour and a half. We walked through with them, what were their likes, what were their dislikes, what were their wants, what would they ultimately really, really like? Did they have examples of what they really liked elsewhere that we could use? And what did they not like? We took all of that information, compiled it, and use that as part. So then after we signed with our vendor, we did another meeting very similar to that, where we sat down with each department and asked them, how do you want your structure to look? This is the templates we're looking at. So start thinking about how you want to present the information on the page, and start thinking through these things so that they were fully bought in. And then the third meeting we had with them was about the audit that we were going to undertake. There was no way Marcom could do an audit by itself based on the volume of pages. So we relied on, excuse me. So we relied on the subject matter experts and their expertise in the various departments, such as education, to determine which pages should be deleted, which ones need to be archived, which ones need to be merged, which would need to be updated, that kind of stuff. So we had buy-in with our internal clients all the way through the process. Even up until launch, we still were using them for quality checks and some surprise double checks of other departments to see if it made sense to them, things like that. So we made sure we involved everybody in the organization, staff-wise, and then some of the leadership and some of the prominent members that we have, to make sure that the buy-in was all the way across the board. We didn't want to make it a Marcom dominant thing.
Right. Okay, that's great. I'm going to pause for 1 second here and just see any of the folks. We have a couple folks online. Hi, Bill. Hi, Jackie. If you guys have any comments or questions, if you want to pop those in the chat. Otherwise, we'll just continue with the script, so to speak. Okay. Well, let's talk video for a moment, because I know you guys have been doing video for a while. And I know that you created a video reveal for the refresh along with some other things. Can you tell us about that strategy?
So video started as a strategy a couple years ago. That was one of the things that that when I came on, that was one of my interests. So we really weren't using video in, I don't think, we were using video, but not in a really interesting or innovative way, just based on the site metrics that I was seeing on YouTube for the channel and page metrics. It just didn't really seem to be working. So we've done some we've used some video contractors to kind of spice up some things in a particular campaign. And then I've branched out onto some of my own work to help with various campaigns and marketing that we've done. So video strategy, it really just folds into the overall communication strategy and marketing strategies that we're doing based on whichever campaign. If the video makes sense, I'll make sure I grab the assets and even do interviews on site. I've done block interviews at our conferences where we get the most of our members together and just do even like target stuff, just on that chance I might capture something I could use down the line. But video has been really important because a lot of marketing and content strategy, it's a key thing right now. It's very much an engaging metric. Just like images for social media, video is also a capture point. We want to make sure that we're using short video that has clear captioning as much as possible. The reveal videos that I was doing for the site teases, this just music, but I used a music dichotomy to help kind of generate a little bit of buzz. It's just visually, and there's no need to have narration if there's no point to it. So we're just, I'm trying different things to see what sticks. I have two audiences that I have to keep in mind: our public audience for the generational, or the general knowledge aspect, and then I have our members that we want to make sure that they're not, that they're included in this too. We want to tell their stories, but we also want to make the information scientifically accurate. We want to make sure that it's positively represented. It's within the standards that they set within the board and all of that. So.
Okay. And just so folks know, whether you're online now or watching this video after the fact, Ben has shared links with us to some of the videos that they've produced according that, including the refresh video. So I'll post that as an example.
Great, thanks.
So folks can see.
Yeah, the refresh one, we actually did 3 or 4 of them based on different, like an education one, public resources. The one I shared that you'll see with this is the general title page, which actually, if you go to it now, has actually changed a little bit more, because as we've launched, as you launch a site, you're always looking for feedback, and we're tweaking as we go. The general look is still the same, but we've tweaked the pictures. We've tightened a little bit of the blockage, but otherwise, you can tell obviously from the very beginning which is SharePoint 10 and which is better than SharePoint 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's a good transition then as we move toward wrap up. What's next in the content strategy at AIHA for the website?
So the website, the enterprise piece is done. Now we're looking at doing our LLCs and a couple of our affiliate pieces, such as our foundation, our Product Stewardship Society, which are both affiliated with us. We have 3 LLCs that are tied to us as well. All of them are getting this same upgrade to their sites, but it's going to be slightly different looks and feels based on their content needs and what their audience structure is. We're not mandating that our 3 audiences fit those. They all have their own particulars, and we're working with each of those interior clients to make sure that we're maximizing what they want to do. So that's going to run us through the end of the year, and then we're going into our conference time, which is yet another internal client that we want to make sure, and that one's going to be the more splashy push that we're doing to make our event a little pop even more. We've done a lot of success with the tools that we've had before. We're trying to add some more to it. Beyond that, we really want to make the website a premier location for the public to come to get information about disaster recovery, dealing with things, situations like Legionella, which is water illness, the fires and disasters. I already said that. Mold and all that kind of stuff that affects everybody in some way. We want to part of our mandate is to keep people safe in the public sphere. So that's going to kind of push that a little bit more, since we've done that to an extent, but now with this site and the ease of accessibility, we really want to make that stand out as a prominent feature.
Great. Okay. So before we close out, again, any questions from the folks that are listening in? Otherwise, you can certainly share those questions when we post the video and the resources up on Content Forum, and I'll reach out to Ben to let him know so he can respond, hopefully. You're getting a thanks.
No problem. Yeah, no problem.
In the chat. So again, thanks for joining us today, folks online, and Ben, I really, really appreciate your time and sharing this information with us.
Not a problem. I will say this at the very end as a piece, as a tip, because I know one of the first questions a lot of people ask is, how much does it cost? I will tell you right now, because we put in the legwork at the beginning and we were able to come to the table for the vendors with exactly what we were looking for, with additional, looking for ideas from them too. We were able to
Sure.
keep the cost really down to, it was less than, I believe, $200,000 to do this in complete site pullover. So,
That's great.
you know, it's an idea to, you know, it's not going to be something that costs, you know, $500,000 to $1 million plus branding. You know, if you do your legwork ahead of time and you really spend the time looking for a vendor that fits exactly what you want, and you're going into it that way, you can find a budget conscious and a budget friendly service.
That's super great advice. Thanks for sharing that real world, that real world information. It's not just me saying it. It really happens.
Yeah, it does. You're right.
Okay, awesome. Thanks very much, Ben, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks. Glad you're here.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.